Now from the east to the west, the north coast, a place I love the best. WordLife came together from the 401 just so people could get together, not contest. You know that we feel much stress when they try to divide and rule. Do we invest in our own and not play the fool? WordLife comes together as a collaboration. Bring together people separated through years of migration, conflagration. Coming together down these four roads that we walk in, these alleyways we walk in, sometimes after skulking. Check how we come together like this shit be listening, and on your cheeks tears be glistening. And
all right, well, welcome everybody to WordLife20. I'm Anthony Bansfield, and I'm here to host this panel today, where we're going to be discussing not only the WordLife CD that was released 20 years ago, but also, you know, the work being done in the past and the present and moving into the future of Black Canadian artists, particular spoken word. But, you know, we work in a number of different genres, and some of the folks we have here today certainly have explored a lot of those different genres, be able to give their thoughts and some of the work they do and relating it from the past, moving forward into the future. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Zip-Loks, who is going to start us off. He's in Montreal, and AKA Steve Hennessy. Go ahead, Zip.
What's going on? It's a Z to the I to the P combined, Zip-Loks. Yeah, I'm here representing the Word Life. I was a part of it back then and continue to stay involved in the whole scene. So I'm helping my man, Nth Degree. I'm like the hype man. I used to be with Butter Babies, the hype man. So I'm kind of the hype Zoom man is what's going on today. We're just going to have a live panel. We got some guests, some that were part of the CD and some that were influenced and are part of the scene now. So we'll go through the introductions. First, we can start with you, Jamaal. You want to say a little something about yourself?
Greetings, peace and blessings. My name is Jamaal Jackson Rogers, also known as JustJamaal the Poet. I am an artist practicing out of Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. I am a hip hop artist, a songwriter, a performer, a poet, stage poet, page poet, performance poet, as well as an arts educator and the founder of and co-owner of the Origin Arts and Community Center and Black Rhino Artist Retreat here in Ottawa.
Nice, dope. Definitely go check out and support that. We also got representing out of Cap City, but I know you're kind of in between both spots. We got Liz. Go ahead, introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Liz Clarke. I also go by HBTSLE. I'm a spoken word poet. I'm a rapper. I do a lot in music. I compose piano, videographer, photographer, anything to do with the creative arts, I'm there. I'm also an arts educator, a child and youth care practitioner. So I work a lot with young people and helping them develop their potential in their creative any creative endeavors that they have. And yeah, I'm in between Toronto and Ottawa. I'm Scarborough born, but Ottawa really raised me into my creative prime.
Okay. Good. Welcome aboard. Thank you for participating today. And we have, last but absolutely not least, my girl Jemini, who I got to say, for me and her, the connection, I guess, really begins at WordLife. And it's been a connection that's helped us both through the industry in different ways. So Jemini, go ahead and introduce yourself.
What's up? My name is Jemini, and I am a poet and writer. I'm an actress and a radio and TV personality based out of Toronto.
Welcome. All right, so I'd like to thank you guys all. We got my boy Nth Degree. We're going to be bouncing some questions back and forth at you guys. So for all the listeners, just sit tight, and we're going to hear what's going on in the world of poetry in Canada. Go ahead, Mr. Nth Degree. Oh, we got you on mute. Yeah.
Mute. Here we go.
Here we go.
All right. Thanks, Zip. Yeah, once again, I'm Anthony Bansfield, also known as Nth Degree. 20 years ago, a group of us came together to record and release and follow up on with performances a CD, a record called WordLife Tales of Underground Griot. And the idea is that we would be working towards connecting what we saw as the, you know, this beautiful movement of Black spoken word poetry that was also crossing over into other fields like music and, you know, other areas of performance art. And we came together to document some of that and, you know, see what everybody was doing and connect each other to work in these three cities who, you know, had really the largest, and I believe continue to do, the largest Black populations in Canada. And of course, we, you know, connected pretty much by the 401, so we could move back and forth freely, covered some ground. And, you know, it brought us to a lot of work that had an impact and continued throughout the years. And we saw that, a number of people that we can, worked with over time as well came up and were doing some incredible work. So this idea of like 20 years later is to celebrate that. But as I say, also look at some of the work that's been going on and sort of speak about some of that development and evolution of Black spoken word poets in the broader context of art, which we work with. So I wanted to have a chance to ask each of you some of your thoughts on that record, just to start things off. And, some of the tracks that you heard and, some of what inspired you in your contributions to the record. So I guess I'll just start off with Jem. Maybe share some of your thoughts on that.
Okay, first of all, I just want to point out that we all came together, but I think we need to be very clear that, well, at least for me, it was you that spearheaded this. You brought us together. This was your idea. You reached out to everyone. We kind of were like, what is it we're trying to do? You want to bridge Ottawa? What are we doing? And so I appreciate that you're being humble, and we were all happy to gather with you and under your direction, but I think that needs to be pointed out. So I guess if you don't want to point it out, I just want to point that out. For me at the time, it's like, and I think with a lot of performers, any opportunity, you know what I mean, to put our art out there, we were down with. Anything that was different, because it was something we were all working on and creating and didn't know the boundaries of, and this was different for me. I was actually, because I was familiar with some of the Toronto poets, I was so inspired for the Montreal and Ottawa poets. That to me was a revelation. Because it's not like it is now where we're just on the internet, we're all connected. It was very, and I come from a background of underground hip hop radio. So it worked the same as those tapes. I worked on a show on CKLN called The Power Move, which was the biggest hip hop show in Canada. But people across Canada only heard us if their friends came and had a tape and brought it, and then they would hear, just like how we would hear New York. So for me, it was like, I didn't have that person in Ottawa telling me about the scene. I didn't have that person bringing back tapes or kind of describe, how would I hear that spoken word? So this was just such a beautiful experience. And then in listening to it, it wasn't so different. You know what I mean? It was beautiful and it was different, but I heard myself. I heard my family. I heard those Caribbean roots. I heard the jazz. I heard what we were working on here too. And it was almost a shame, like, if we are so alike, why?
All right, I think we just
and why is my mother calling me right now from Grenada and interrupting our Zoom call? So yeah.
Call still. Call her back.
And she'll keep calling. That's how, West Indian mothers. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Wow.
Thank you, Jemini.
Thank you.
I think also I'd like to go to Jamaal. Jamaal, I know you had a chance to hear some of these tracks, and that when we were speaking earlier, you had a chance to do some of your performances that people have a chance to see later in the production. Maybe you could give an idea of what struck you about those tracks and what you heard and sort of the spirit of the record, and it's maybe in relation to the context of some of the work you've done as well.
Well, first of all, what I heard was incredible writing and craftsmanship from artists from the Afro-Caribbean community that I didn't, some of these artists I didn't know, I didn't know previous to this, listening to this album, and the writing was exceptional. This to me it's a classic album. I listened to it front to back. Some of the tracks I listened a couple times to be able to dive deeper into the themes, and it's just an incredible work of art. So kudos to everybody and congratulations to everybody that worked on this. It's actually beyond me that 20 years ago, the spoken word, the essence of spoken word was just so riveting. And I find it's when I compare it to today's spoken word artists, and of course, some of the opinions I have about spoken word here in North America, I found that this was the strength of storytelling and speaking power to truth was just ringing so true to me. And it was a great reminder to me of why I do what I do. And the elders that came before me who literally tilled the land and set the foundation for me to professionally do what I do. Again, I hadn't been introduced to some of the artists that were in this album. There's only actually a few that I know, and that's really just three that I recognize. One I haven't had the opportunity to meet, but I know of her motion, I know of her work, and then yourself, Inth, and of course Eddie, the original one. So for me, taking in this album was just a journey through time. And I thought about 20 years, like I've been married 20 years, and it seems like a long time for me, but I'm thinking 20 years ago, if the fire and the energy was so strong, I'm asking myself now, what happened? I find it hard. I think I would find it hard pressed to find, this cohort of, maybe 10 plus creatives or maybe more that could put together something so strong. Now I know times change and the strength and quality of things are different and subjective, but in terms of what I do and the messages that I try to relay, I strongly relate to this, and I would love to, and I'm glad and I'm happy that this is being talked about and the vault is being opened again to discuss this project. So the ones that stuck out to me was Motion's Midnight. Just the opening and the storytelling from that it just blew me away. Perfect. Whoever put the lineup for this, was like really thinking, right? Back in the days when we think what tracks come first to make a classic album. And then Eddie, the original one, with his style and his delivery and his tone. And I know tone was such an important thing for creatives. It still is, of course, but tone was such an important thing for Afro-Caribbean spoken word poets and hip hop artists that Eddie, the original one's Justice Denied was powerful, especially growing up here in Ottawa. And I knew Vincent Gardner. He was like an uncle to me. Right, my father used to take me around Vincent Gardner, and I met him and the whole community there, and his passing away by the hands of police brutality. And then, of course, Nth Degree's Rubber Dub Radio, which was just a vibe, nostalgia galore. I was raised on old school R&B. I wasn't raised on old school reggae, but I was raised on, we're talking 1950s R&B. That's all I was exposed to. So when I heard Rubber Dub Radio, it took me back to this day when my father would just, in Guyana, he would play music that was, before my time, and it kind of invited me to a world beyond me. So kudos and thank you.
Thanks, Jamaal. Liz, I know you've had that experience too of, being across cities, from Toronto and then being in Montreal, and, like a lot of us made those travels down to 401 East and West. I know you've heard some of what Jamaal said, and I wonder too about some of your impressions listening to the record, and what struck you about it, and what you found as a connection, your experiences in both cities, and in the times that you've kind of emerged too as an artist.
Yeah, my thoughts on this, I loved listening to it in order. Like Jamaal was talking about, the sequence really hit, and that was really important to me when I was listening to it. I was like, that really fit right there. I took in the curation. I was like, someone curated this so that it hit like this. So that, like each track was hit in the way that it was supposed to hit. And Jamaal, Midnight, that I would agree with your take on Midnight there as well. I really enjoyed the flow, and that it started off with that woman voice, and it really struck home for me that it started off with a woman voice and with the flow and the lyricism. It reminds me of what I tried to practice growing in my art form, that trying to have that sound, trying to have that storytelling, and be able to articulate and enunciate my words in that way so that they're hitting. That when people are hearing them, they can hear the development of the song, and I really appreciated that from that track. So I would have to say that really was it for me. And the introduction, the interlude, I had to rewind. I was like, oh, let me appreciate this one more time. I had to rewind. I was like, okay, we're starting this off. And honestly, it was really, I was shocked that I hadn't come across something like this before this point until being involved with WordLife, that I had no exposure to this previously. And just hearing so much of the patois that was used, it really warmed my heart to hear so much patois. I was like, oh my goodness, Scarborough Jamaican Bajan girl here is so ready to hear all of this. I was like this. And I was really excited to hear that. And I've had this conversation with a lot of people of how I stunted myself from using patois in my music, just because I'm Canadian born. and my father's not in my life, so I don't have the Jamaican culture, but I grew up in Scarborough, so I'm still close to it. So hearing this in the spoken word pieces really helped me to feel confident in my heritage, and that I should be dropping more patois in my tracks, which I do now, and that I should really connect with that and put that language, that dialect within who and what I create. So I really definitely appreciate hearing all that.
Well, Zip, thanks, Liz. And Zip, I mean, you were there when we were covering some of that ground, and I wonder if you just say a little bit about like what really inspired you to get involved in this project, and your recollections about how it came together, and your contributions to it, and some of the things that really stuck out for you on that, especially like in regards to some of the artists you were moving with at the time.
How I remember it is basically Anthony coming to us and he's like, yo, I got this idea. How about this? And we was kind of like, okay, no one's ever done that before. 3 cities together, 1 CD. Honestly, that was, for many of us, some of the first time we recorded material and released it. So it was a launching pad for so many different artists. And I think the other big part about it too is it kind of made a kind of a collective and a connection between the 3 cities. And then from there, you know, we migrated into Butter Baby. The group came kind of out of, with myself and Manchild, out of WordLife, that often went to Toronto. And it's funny, I'm on here with Jemini. Like, Jemini was hosting a radio show, was down there. Like, straight up, we used to go down to Toronto and we'd stay by people's spots. And people from Toronto, when they were coming to Montreal, they'd all crash on my house. So that's kind of what it was building a relationship. Thanks for letting me stay at your place, Gemini, back then.
Anytime.
It was building a connection amongst a collective. And again, a lot of these artists use that also as a kind of a blueprint for getting grants to be able to do the music. And I think that was another major part that it definitely made a change in my musical career, because then I actually was able to access money. And you kind of, again, you showed us the blueprint of how to access government money to do some of the artistic stuff we're doing. So, you know, through Canada Council support, a lot of different artists benefited and a lot of great art was created. Like, if you look at all the different art that those artists have created since then, it's like, all of them dope, you know. And again, all the stories were interrelated. Like, you could hear a story about, you know, relationships. You hear stories about, you know, we talk about Black Lives Matters now. You listen to some of them tracks, it's the exact same thing that we were talking about then, you know. And again, it was in their city and they're calling their people's names, but the same thing has happened in my city. So again, it's making that connection amongst us Caribbean, you know, African Canadians, that made that bond over that 401 a lot stronger, thanks to you.
You know, I think that's a really big point that you made, Zip, even just in about us understanding that we had access to grants.
Yeah.
Because at that time we would only see older people, older white people who had that access, were not telling us how to get it. And even there were some probably people within our communities, some Black elders, who weren't exactly reaching out to tell us how to do it. Also probably because they were just struggling to get in there too. And the people that we saw who were getting it weren't speaking patois. Yeah. So for him to show us that example, that not only was that for us and we had a right to access it, we had a right to access it and do work that represented us. Because you get into those offices and spaces sometimes and feel like you have to speak in a certain way. You have to be a good boy or girl to get this Canadian money. And it was a really big thing, not only as far as access to grants, but even traveling.
Yes.
You know, those were some of the first times, like you said, that we would travel. I mean, when my parents first moved here from Grenada, they lived in Montreal. So I would go back and forth, but that was the first time we traveled on our own, right, as adults or young adults, to do work. It wasn't to visit family. It was cool if we had family there, but it was a big thing to say to your West Indian parents who were like, so you want to write rhymes and poetry? And it was a big thing to be able to say to them, like, I'm traveling for my work. Like, I've actually, this is an echelon, this is something. And, you know, they want to show auntie so-and-so and uncle so-and-so, she or he is there doing that art stuff that I told you about. So that was a big thing to create movement for us financially, but also just us moving through that landscape.
Yeah, and the good thing too is the quality of the end product was good. So I think Canada Council at that point had to recognize that these type people and those artists I know probably were looked at as these are qualified people to get further grants because they were part of such a great product. So thank you.
Right. And I'm
Yeah,
sure a lot of us use that. You know, when they said, show us what you've done,
You know what I mean?
all of us probably said, well, there's this thing called WordLife. I can show you my work.
It was
And
really
we talk a lot about Canada too, but it was also big that this took us to New York. This took us to hallowed ground. And I remember even going there, you knew it was great material, but it was like, yeah, but in these spaces, this is the Mecca. And to watch people there and their reaction to us was amazing. It was like they hadn't seen anything like that. And I think they also walked in like the Canadians and the crowds and some of the spaces we went to don't even exist anymore. So that was a big thing too, because it was international. It wasn't just in Canada.
Jim, sorry, Zip, I want to just get you on one point in terms of context when this came out, because you know, like what people like Ayanna Black and Afua Cooper and Lillian Allen, Michael St. George, you know, Clifton Joseph, like they were the people that kind of helped mentor me and coach me, and sort of even like Lillian, you know, helping me to see how to write a grant and so on. So they opened doors for us. And, you know, when we were coming into that time in the mid and late 90s, like some of the stuff that was going on, you saw the energy that was continuing some of the things that, you know, the dub poets and others had done. It's like, especially in Toronto. And I just wonder if you could say a little word about some of that, like, you know, the all true spoken or poetry in motion and Honey Jam and some of that, you know, some of that, those sort of very community oriented artistic events and series that you saw from the late 90s going into the 2000s, and the kind of energy, like what struck you about that time in the context of what was going on, what people were saying and how they got together?
You know, it was definitely one of those things where we were all doing a million things, because there wasn't, now we can kind of specialize and say, this is what I do. But it was like, Cougar and his poetry series was so amazing. He was also doing work in promoting. Then there's Honey Jam with Ebony, myself, a lot of other women coming together to give a platform to women, which actually started, there was a mic check that we took over just for one episode of the magazine. And there was so much complaints and men were so angry. There were actually men who were crying because they said, it was a radio show we also did. It was a female, and there was hip hop guys outside, like hardcore, and there was tears because they were so frustrated because we were going to play 3 hours of the Power Move show, all females. And they were just like, hip hop is for guys. They were so upset. And it really showed us, like, we have to put more women out there. We have to give ourselves platforms. And so things like Honey Jam. And then when you look at the people that came out of Honey Jam, it's that Mecca when everything was possible. You know, it was like, you see all these superstars now who came out. There's so many women who have came out of Honey Jam, from your Nelly Furtados, your Julie Blacks, me. There's so many women. And it's not like we all owe our complete career to it, because some of these women were already out there, but it was definitely a huge platform that we didn't have before. All True Spoken. It was just like that place where you didn't feel like you needed a New York, because you felt like we had our own movement. And we see people who, like Director X, who were stars on that stage. And a lot of people don't even know that he was a poet. And, you know, it was just like, if you were creative, this was something that you tried your hand at. And so many people were so talented, but sometimes it wasn't just about poetry. It was, I need to speak. And Director X, if you see the work he's doing right now for All Lives, for Black Lives Matter, you know that it was really just about expressing himself. Yeah. And that anger. And, you know, he did it also through art. And we just, all of us had 5 different caps. If someone was on the radio, they might have also been a poet or a DJ and a promoter, because there weren't enough people to control all of those things. So it was like, we had to be everything. Right. Yeah. And we just had to teach ourselves. And there was no one to tell us we were doing it wrong. I was never taught how to do radio. I actually went to school for radio after I had been on the radio. And I'm sure no one showed Cougar how to promote, you know, just like you or WordLife, or it was just like, this is just, we're going to try a thing. Yeah. And it was hugely successful. And it is strange because even after WordLife, I kind of felt like I'd see like thousands more projects like that. It was so successful, it worked. You just thought there'd be so much more support or people trying to do it.
Yeah. We did see like a whole lot of, you know, recordings that came out after, like Karen Richardson, and there was exchanges and so on. But no, that's interesting. Yeah, and I remember those times quite vividly. Thanks for that, Jem. I wonder, Liz, like from you coming up as a Black artist that works as an MC, you know, also spoken word poetry, photography, and so on. Like, what have been the things that inspired you, that gave you a chance to kind of come up and explore some of your creativity, especially, you know, in terms of having a space as a Black artist that you had some mentorship and you had a chance to express in a way that you know, you could feel free to speak on themes that were strongly in your mind.
Yes, it's been quite a journey, and it really started in high school when Unity Charity in Toronto came to my school to teach us the 4 elements of hip hop. And it was from that spark where I really took on spoken word poetry. And a journey being a Black woman in this art form is quite challenging, and it's perplexing. As I was developing in my craft and becoming better, I was my biggest critic, because I knew I had to push myself harder. And I got into a lot of spaces in this industry where I did face a certain level of disrespect and a certain level of, or the condescension of, oh, you're a rap, you're a rapper as a woman. And I'm like, yeah, I am. That's what I do. And I denied myself that title for a long time, you know? And I think that it took a lot for me to get out of that mindset and really delve deep into my crafts. And I started to get into the industry by being a manager, an artist manager. And that's where I really learned to what it's like behind the scenes and getting that insight. You were talking about everyone had to do all the roles, Gemini, and that's what I had to do over the past couple of years, of learn about the behind scene, how to book shows, how to support the artists in their journey. And I now use those skills for myself. I do a lot of the creations for myself because I'm self-taught. All the videography, the photography, all the writing, I've taught myself this because I know it's what has to be done if I want to propel myself in my career and in my purpose. And it's been quite challenging, but because I can do these things, I'm confident in what I bring to the table and confident in my value prop. So when I go into spaces, I know who I am and I know what I can do. And that's the strength I've had as a Black woman, as an artist, creative, and emerging.
Yeah. Thanks, Liz. I know, Jamaal, like you've been doing a lot of work in Ottawa, you know, when you started out Urban Legends, and it really, you know, blossomed into an incredible series, especially for a lot of Black spoken word artists that came up there subsequently, like, you know, Ian Kedeku and Ikenna and others. I wonder, you know, for you as somebody, you know, starting to explore your own growth as an artist, and you know, coming to Ottawa and coming up here, and you know, what sort of inspired you as an artist and as an organizer to actually start these things, and what inspired you, what helped you, what challenges you have, especially in terms of you know, being a Black artist and a Black performer and creative, trying to create those spaces and get your own stuff out.
Well, first I'd like to make a mention that I didn't start Urban Legends Poetry Collective. I was the second generation organizer and director for it. The people who initially started Urban Legends was Ian Kedeku and Suhaib, and then eventually Suhaib went on to run it for, I think, about a year and a half, and then Sergio, or Haif the Gypsy Son, he took it on, and then I came in after that when I found that some of the founders were just moving away from spoken word. So I took it on with a good friend and poet of mine named Sensei, or Hamid Ibrahim. But yeah, I ran Urban Legends, and that's where I was also still slamming. I was a slammer, and I was competing, you know, quite frequently. And one of the things that I began to see in spaces was Urban Legends was I knew that the foundation of Urban Legends was that it was a space for people of color to come and share, tell their story. And it was supposed to be an alternate space to the other spoken word events going on in the city, where Oftentimes, you wouldn't, a person of color, Black people, wouldn't feel comfortable entering these spaces and sharing their stories and their narrative. And so I know that's why Urban Legends was started. So I was attracted to it when I first started sharing my poetry. I was really attracted to the coming into a space where I could relate to the content. And that's kind of what prompted me when I saw that they were ready to pass it on, to put my hat in as a director and organizer. And from that, you know, I guess term or time in my life, which was around 2011 to about 2013, 2014, I started to come to understand the value of being part of a community, because I was always a person searching for a community. And when I started to embrace my artistic passion, my pursuit to be a creative, I knew that the artistic scene was my community. I wanted to refine it though, and that was really important to me, to refine that community, because what I started to see happen was Black art, or as they call it in the corporate world, urban art, which is obviously, you know, an incorrect term, but Black art was becoming gentrified. And because I knew that I didn't have, as one person, the platform and the ability yet, like I didn't have the voice yet within certain spaces to speak about the gentrification of Black art, I decided to build my own. And that's kind of the process I've been using. I will learn and take the good and obviously the progress that has been built up from my ancestors and my elders, but I want to also build refine the community and the scene that I think the people that I identify with need the most. And so from there, I left Urban Legends Poetry Collective and I decided to just start my own venue. I figured, you know, the space is really important, and that is where you can start dictating what you want things to look like. So instead of starting another poetry slam, I passed on Urban Legends Poetry Collective, but then I began scouting venues in the city, because one thing I realized as a hip hop artist as well, if you want to rent a venue, you're always going to people who don't want hip hop or spoken word in their venues. And so I was facing the gentrification of my culture. I was facing, you know, racism and prejudice due to me bringing my art to spaces. And I decided, you know what, my first rule of artistic creativity is you got to make space to create. Once you have the space, you can now dictate how things flow from there. And so that was my goal. And from there founded the Origin Arts and Community Center, and then brought on 2 other co-owners as well. And then we had Urban Legends run through here. And so, you know, it's kind of like you got to play chess in this game, because when you're a creative in the city and you're a person of color, you're in a town, in an Ottawa town where it's political, it's, you know, based on government jobs or, you know, what master's degree or PhD you've achieved, post-secondary. I had to make sure that I always had a 5-year, 10-year plan, never thinking about just the next month, or I knew that I had to play my pieces right in order to have longevity. And one of those things is making sure that I'm creating ideas or putting ideas out there or creating opportunities for artists to be able to have space to create. And so that's kind of what I focus on now. But of course, within my own creative flux, I'm always trying to write or create from a place of tragedy to triumph, because that's how my life has taken me on a journey, from a place of difficulties to victory. So through that and through my actions, I'm hoping that I can invite more people to have that template as well, to find what your purpose is and create your own table instead of asking people for permission. No more waiting for permission.
Yeah, and that community connectedness too, and you know, supporting spaces is a very interesting, important point, Zip. And I wanted to get to you on that to kind of bounce off what Jamaal is saying. You know, I remember like back in the day, we do work with Youth in Motion, you know, the Blockos at Burgundy and so on, NDG Community Center, and, you know, Côte des Neiges and so on, like in Montreal. And I just, you know, you've been involved in Youth in Motion. You know, you do work with youth and so on, and now with West Haven and NDG. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit too on the kind of connectedness that, as an artist and as, you know, somebody involved in supporting culture and arts, especially for youth engagement and community engagement, like how that's played a role in what you've done in Montreal and how you've seen that come along in those years since the WordLife period.
Yeah, I
And,
mean,
and the rest you can feel to jump in when you're done there. I'm just interested to hear of all of you, what you have to say on that. I know, like, for example, Fresh Arts was a great, supportive space in Toronto for that. I think we've all seen some of that, but yeah, I'd just like to hear what you have to say, and the rest you could feel to jump in
I
after.
mean, the connection between the art I do and the work I do, as in work with youth, is always been close to my heart. And I also see it as a tool. I mean, I know growing up, being a black youth in Montreal, one of the ways I got exposed to what black culture is through music. Is through, and at that time it was through hip hop, and that was just when it was breaking out, and that was something I identified closely to, and wanted to be a part of, whether it be the dress, the look, the language, all the rest of that. Not even as an artist, but just that's the culture that I would live in. And as I worked with youth that were within that culture, I also used the art as a tool because for many people it's been a tool just to express yourself. There's many things that on the street corners, especially back in the day, you just couldn't say to another brother about feelings and this and that. It was all about, representing a certain image. But, you could have Tupac, the biggest, thug life guy, and he's talking about thanking his mother on a record. And that's all right. That's cool. So we're just kind of showing you that the art could be a method that we could communicate safely. You talk about safe spaces. When you're in that booth and you're by yourself and you're recording, it is a safe space. You could talk about your real story and you don't feel like anybody's out there to respond to you right away. Or you could be on a stage, and Jamaal, you put it very important, that you have to have a stage that you feel that you could express yourself and nothing's going to come back at you. That that's your space to express yourself freely. So I use these tools when working with youth, and even in that, I've created a couple of CDs and studios based off other grants, based again off Nth Degree's formula of the connection between music and youth. And music and art and culture, and it giving it actually, it's a preventative method. I always say, I built a studio at West Haven, the community center I work at now, and I always say, if I have 5, 10, 2 kids in the studio, that's 2 or 3 more kids that are off the streets this evening that could be getting into this, that, or the other. And that stuff really happens. So we have to make sure that we got our own and we keep our youth interested. And again, just as kind of you showed me and passed me the torch on how to do this is how you get into a studio when you book it and all these different things, I'm now passing on to a next generation. I'm not here forever, but I want to make sure my next generation, my children, my children's children, my community, even if I move out of here, I know that there's some physical stuff that's in my space that I've created for youth to go and access. So, that's often been my theory. And I also work at in a psychiatric department where I work, and they use it as a therapy. It is, music is therapy. It definitely is for me. So knowing that and using those tools within my own actual work has been a blessing. It's like combining my 2 favorite things. So this WordLife CD, all the things that we did back then to the things we do now are influences on the next generation through the things that we've created. Mute. I heard Anthony. Yeah, I'm mute. We got you.
Sorry, I'm Jem. I'll just put this to you first. But like, how, in terms of that community engagement and connectedness, the other thing we often wrestle with, I think, is like the role you play as an artist to speak on certain subjects and balancing that with your personal inspiration. I mean, how do you navigate that? What do you see, especially in these kind of troubling times, on the role of an artist to comment and speak, and how that works in terms of social change?
I think we can't even get into how important it is. It's really been beautiful but heartbreaking for me because I've had so many people ask me to rewrite or to repost or put up America Eats Its Young because it's talking about police brutality and some of the cases, 20 something years ago. And it breaks my heart. That's something you would have written that long ago thinking this will be it. Is still so needed today, to have people asking for it today, 20 years later. And that shows me how important it is. As far as our role, it's interesting. I always tell that story because America Eats Us Young just came out of, I was on the radio and doing hip hop radio, no less. And they would let me do I didn't really even consider it poetry, just these little breaks where I would just talk and just riff on things. But because I'm a reader, because, you know, I respect lyrics and poetry, I guess it came out like that. And I think that's when Cougar or Black Cat first asked me, and Dwayne Morgan, a big shout to Dwayne Morgan, to come out and do poetry. And to me, it was like, it's not really poetry, but again, it was like, hey, we have a crowd. There might be some money involved. I was like, okay, I'll work on it. You know what I mean? I'll make it poetic. And Nick Holder, who used to he's a huge hip hop fan, used to listen to the show, came down one day and said, I produce music and I'd like to have you do one of those things you're doing on the radio to a track. But it was house music. And I told him, and I didn't know who he was, but everybody was like, this guy's huge. Like, if you do anything about house music, somebody told me he was the P. Diddy of house music. And I was just like, okay, whatever that means. But at the time, I think there was the Abner Louima case. There was Diallo's case. And I told him, I understand it's a big opportunity, but I cannot write. And my understanding was house music is love and hey, pretty girl. And I was just like, I can't write about that. This is the only thing I could write about. And he just kind of told me, you can say whatever you want to say. And I wrote a piece about police brutality in America. And he trusted me, and he didn't change either. He put it on these kind of bossa nova beats, and it became a huge hit. It went on to Billboard, it was on dance floors, it was all over the world. And people would tell me that what would happen would be they would dance to it, and then these kids would just stop in the middle of the dance floor and just look up because they'd get the message. But that wasn't the point. And I thought it would fail, I'll be honest with you. But the point is, that was my responsibility. Not only my responsibility, but I actually, as an artist and as a Black woman who was enraged, I actually could not do anything else. It wasn't even like, oh, this is your responsibility to do, but you might want to do a love poem. I couldn't write anything else. And I think, you know, if we are real to the voice in our head, and our voice also speaks to us about justice, that's what we have to do. And it's not like, you know, I'm always gonna, you know, write about police brutality all the time, or it was just, that was where that artistic voice was telling me, this is where you're needed. So I think we all know how to listen to that voice, and no matter how it comes out, this is where we're needed. If it's gonna be success or not, because I really didn't think it was going to be. I just knew that's all that I could. So I think our voice is so important. And I look at what's happening with this pandemic, and it really feels like it's the artists that are saving us. You know, they're our therapy. You know, I saw this thing saying that Bob Marley's music has skyrocketed again because we go back into the catalog of what saves us. And his truth then is a truth now, and we need it so much. So I think that really shows us, you know, how important it is for us to use our voice and speak out on these things, because how many years later, people are still going to Bob, not to hear anything new, but to hear the truths that he gave them then that still resonate now. And even, you know, listening to WordLife, as we said, those things still resonate now. It should be that we go back and it sounds a little dated. No, it should be, but that's been our experience sometimes with music. Mm-hmm. But wow. You go back and you hear these truths, and they're even stronger now. And they mean more now, 20 years later. And that's the mark to me of beautiful art and truthful art.
Wow. Major. Okay, so actually that brings you to the next question is, so now 2020, where is the art scene, the spoken word scene, the Black spoken word scene in Canada right now? Where is it going? Where has it been? What do you guys see as the future?
Ooh. I'll say this, I feel like we've seen some of those glory days. And just like when you talk about the golden, not that it can't be better, but I feel like we've had the golden era pass of endless, limitless opportunity. But I do feel like the scene is here, the scene can go wherever. And I do believe it's going to be online, or part of it will also be online. I think that's a big thing that we didn't have when we were first starting out.
Do you think that helps, hurts, or how does that affect?
I think it could help for sure. You know, I see access always helps.
Yeah.
You know, feeling when we have things like, okay, we can't get a club, they won't let us in, they don't want to hear us. The internet's open. You could put it, and people talk about it in the hip hop world too. There are kids, and unfortunately, some of them maybe we might not love, or their talent, or people might be challenging them about their lyrics, but they've said SoundCloud gives access to everyone. YouTube has made people stars because they didn't have to book a studio. They didn't have to look if someone was racist or someone wanted to let them in or their dad was rich. They have a voice. And I think the same can be said for spoken word.
Yeah, and just following on that, Liz, like I was struck by the photography. You can't even call it an exhibit. It was really a very interesting online project that you developed and that integrated. Well, you maybe could speak a little bit about it, and your use of the online technology, because I know you're often releasing stuff now, especially in the context of a pandemic when you don't have that live audience. But yeah, maybe you could speak a little about how that media, you've used it in that way and others.
Sure. Yeah, I did a photography exhibit online called Air Force Blacks, and it was me capturing police interacting with a group of Black men on their way to the Blues Fest Festival. And from that, creating it online, I brought it to life and had an exhibit in Ottawa where I brought my young people out for Black History Month and celebrated them. So it was all these multimedia pieces, the photography, I had videography, and then the in-person aspect that I got to bridge together, and seeing the unity that can come from bridging kind of all of those mediums, and the power that can really have. And now that we have honestly pretty much an exclusive access to online content right now, and not being able to enjoy space with one another, we have to really maximize our ability to produce content online. And I think where we're heading, as you said, is online with spoken word. And I think production is going to be a big key in that, seeing our artists create visuals that speak to their lyrics, speak to their story, and really bridging a lot of the types of medium that are emerging, animation, making sure that our stories are told in those types of ways, and really just skyrocketing through this limit that we've had, that, oh, you just got to be on the stage to perform, a spoken word looks like this, and the clubs don't want us. Oh my, you're right, let's take it online. But now let's step up let's merge the creators, the Black creators that are working together, that I see that are coming together and put projects together, are making big waves. And I love being a part of that, because now I have to think differently. Now that I'm releasing content, I have to think really different. How is this going to engage people with all the content that they have out here now? How am I going to set myself apart? And it's really just staying unique. You said that voice, Jemini. You said listen to that voice that's there. What is calling you right now to speak on, to create? And whether it flops or not, what it called you, and you answered. And that's kind of how I live my creative life now, is just answering the call to what I do. Whether it blows up or not, I did it and I answered my call. I created and it spoke from my heart, did my message. And now pairing that with videography and photography is just amplifying access, who it reaches. Now it can reach people who are looking for photography, people who are looking for videography, and now in the spoken word community, how they get there,
Mm-hmm.
Jamaal, you're developing like a studio. Could you tell us about that, and what was behind that, and what do you see in the future for that, and why you developed it?
Well, I wanted. It's interesting because it was the Black Panther movie that prompted me to think about Black excellence. And when I thought about I was really watching at that year, last year, I was watching the Oscars to see if they would give Black Panther their roses and give it Best Picture. It didn't win Best Picture, unfortunately, but it did get some other awards for I think it's costume design and maybe even score. But it was Black excellence, and I wanted to create a hub for artistic Black excellence. And to do that, I realized that the Black community needs a lot of healing. They need, once again, their own space. So I live a little outside the city, and I have about an acre of space. And I wanted to, when I saw Tyler Perry open his studio on, acres and acres of land in Atlanta, I decided I'm going to use my small property to create an artist retreat called the Black Rhino Artistic Retreat. And so even the name itself is a nod to Black Panther, and the art, the different forms of art that were weaved into that film and the storyline of that film. It just inspired me to think about Black excellence from a creative standpoint, and what could I do now to create more space for people to foster and nurture their creative talents, especially Black people and people of color. And so the studio that I'm building is my wife and I are building, it's a two-story floor. The upper floor is a study where you can dance, move, write, exercise. The main floor is the showcase floor where you can put on small shows and you can kind of go give it a trial run before you bring it back to the city or you take it on tour. And so the hope is that this will be another form of access to the community so that they can dive deeper into their work and that we can create something that is for us, by us, right? Because there are so many, and you know what also prompted me? I was thinking about Banff, right? The Banff Center for the Arts. And I was thinking about one day, I'm like, I'd love to go to Banff. I'd either love to go there to study or to instruct. But then I was like, just build my own, you know what I mean? Build it yourself. So the idea is to find more ways to have creatives to take on pursue their passion as artists. But how do we do that when everything looks so not like us? When everything is not inviting us to do that? It's oftentimes we have to look towards our own capacities and our own resources and try to find a way. And this is what Black people are good at. We're good at finding a way. And so I'm just honoring my ancestors with the Black Rhino Artist Retreat.
Yeah, that's interesting. Thanks, Jamaal. I think we're just about winding down now, but before we go, I just invite each of you just to say a few words about what you're involved in right now, and moving forward. You've talked about the studio, but any projects that you want to mention right now moving forward, and whether it's work artistically or otherwise. And also say a few words about where people could find out a little bit about you and the work you're doing. So Zip, maybe I'll start with you on that. Yeah. I know you guys are continue to do the great work on the radio show out there, and you're doing online engagement with, you got some interesting stuff going on. Maybe you can say a few words about that too.
Just trying to keep it active and busy. Right now, my main focus artistically is I express myself, and please, Montreal, Canadian artists, please send me your stuff. I'll give it ZIPLOKSMTL at Gmail. Hit me up. We have a radio show every Sunday night. Il Groove Garden, myself, DJ Blaster. And actually, our radio show started off as a blend of hip hop, poetry, and we do rare groove and a little bit of anything. Last hour of the week, 11 to 12 on CKUT, www.ckut.ca. That's kind of one of my artistic expressions, but also, again, I'm working with youth. I have a studio down at West Haven Community Center in NDG in Montreal. Free for youth to come, join, participate. We do classes from recording to DJing to writing lyrics and all the rest of that. So any teenagers interested, definitely come check me out. I'm there on social media. I do everything from Zoom parties to anything else. So we party it tonight. So just hit me up. Instagram, ZIPLOKS.
And Jem, I know you guys got a lot of interesting things on the go, and especially some shifts there where you at now with radio. But maybe you can say a little about what you're up to, and what you see happen in the future, and where people can find out about it.
Right. Well, we are in the midst of fighting the good fight to make sure that there is a Black-owned radio frequency. Normally, people can hear myself and my partner, Mark Strong, on G98.7, which is Canada's only, at this point, Black-owned commercial station. They're going through a process right now of being sold, and we're just trying to make sure that it stays Black-owned, and also that the CRTC designates, right now it's a world music license that we have, but we'd like to designate that it stay Black music, because it's actually the last open, it was the last open area on the dial. So normally that's where we would be on G, Monday to Friday, 6 to 10 a.m. every morning. Right now we're kind of going through it. For me personally, I was really getting into doing some voice acting and was blessed that one of my mentors here in the city, who has always been like my writing mother, Althea Prince, she has a book that's called Ladies of the Night, and it's a collection of short stories out of Antigua. I was able to voice that book, so that was an honor and a blessing. I also have another book that I voiced called Shut Up, You're Pretty by Tia Matonji. Yeah, I love the title. The title caught me. Liz catches it. The title caught me alone. As far as spoken word, I have two or three songs out right now out of Europe, out of London. One is called 50 Ways. And there's another one, it's by Risk Assessment. There's another one, it's a house track called Disco that is absolutely blowing up. And it's just going into the old school heavyweights of disco and giving it its respect. So that's what's up with me, and people can check me out online. I'm most active on Instagram, Miss Jemini, but they can find me wherever or on the radio.
Thanks, Jem. How about you, Jamaal? I know you talked about the studio. What are some other things you have going on, and where could people find out about them?
Well, more institution building. So hopefully I'll be launching the Highlight Awards, which is an award ceremony to give people the roses while they're here. It'll definitely be as diverse as possible, considering I'll be the one spearheading it. But, the pandemic has kind of put a pause on that this year. It was supposed to launch this year in October, but hopefully next year things will loosen up a bit and we can have that going on. So it's basically an award ceremony that's supposed to be black tie affair type award ceremony, if people can, make it and then give people their roses and celebrate. Then there is the Hip Hop Academy of Higher Learning. So I'm looking into bringing some hip hop heads across Ontario and see if they want to launch a hip hop institution. Ottawa has House of Paint, which runs once a year. They now have Cranium Festival, but they're festivals and they don't tend to run all year long. I'm looking to see if we can create something similar to the Toronto area and the Montreal area that is an institution for hip hop that can run all year long. So it's a long-term project, but those are the things that I'm working on. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, on any of those social media platforms, my website. But I want to give a shout out to Jackie DeToy and Ali Masana Captain, who are the co-owners of the Origin Arts and Community Center. They are amazing individuals and creatives. My older brother is Captain, and he is definitely a historian in hip hop and has guided me and been a mentor for me. And Jackie DeToy is also a mentor of mine and a peer, and she's a phenomenal storyteller and artist and presenter as well. And they are doing amazing things here at the Origin when it comes to the Origin District theater company that we're starting up hopefully this November.
How about you, Liz? I know you have a record coming out just now.
Yes, I do.
I think you probably got some other stuff going on. Maybe you could say a little bit about what's happening and where people could find out.
Yes, I am doing a lot right now. Hopefully, I want to spark up some my creative energy and put it towards making a lot of more music. I'm releasing a single called Velvet because I'm too sweet like velvet. That's how.
Bang, bang, bang.
No, a little patois in that one too. Look out for that one. Look at 1-2 spit line. But I'm excited for that release and I want to do some videography projects and a podcast and words of wisdom. I really want to share a lot of wisdom. I work a lot with youth and I love getting to share my knowledge thus far and bring up Black youth. I did the Black Flood. I launched around the time George Floyd was murdered, and it was just a collection of Black creatives getting together to post content online. It was, it was like an online festival. One day I planned it in 24 hours. I was like, they need to hear our voices. They need to know that Black creatives are here, that we're standing up. So I did that, and I was just able to share some funds with some young people so that they can go forth and do their own creative endeavors. So I want to keep doing things like that and working with my young people so that they can start launching things. Whatever resources you need, let's go. So I'm looking into acquiring resources and just bridging the gaps between Toronto and Ottawa. There's way too much talent in these cities to be so disconnected and to be so competitive and stomping on people's territories, it feels, and we need to do more of the bridging. And I hope just by connecting with people and talking with people and connecting with their art on a real level, that's what I want to start doing. It doesn't have to be anything glamorous. It doesn't have to be anything, we just start the connecting and bridging the communities, and we'll go from there. So that's where my energy is right now.
Cool.
Oh, you can find me on my name, HBTSLE, on everything, Instagram, Twitter. Yes, I'd be on Twitter. So yeah, anywhere there.
Come again on that list. I think we just broke up for a sec. Just say that one more time.
Oh yeah, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at HBTSLE. Very active on there.
Cool. All right, thanks. And as for myself, the Nth Degree, I'm always putting out a little thing now and again. I did something for the Cascadoo Festival. My people's in Trinidad. A piece called Cover Raw. So if you go NTHDIGRI, you'll see that on YouTube. And a little live piece I did with my brethren, Salah Adam, talented drummer. And I always got a little thing I'm putting out here and there. I expect to put out a record coming out soon. But before we bounce out though, just like to let Zip. Well, first of all, thanks Zip for helping out. Thanks all of you for being part of this. Motion and Eddie in the background and Dwayne. Northern Griots Network, strong collective work, and we look forward to continuing to help support some of this dialogue, discussion, and to feature some performances. Let people have a chance to to let the world know about the work we're doing and help to build our sector. As Black artists and the broader spoken word and poetry and music context we work in. So again, thanks y'all. And before we go though, I think Zip, maybe if you could take us through a little selection we'll let you just roll us out, hang in there for a few minutes and hear a little bit of a WordLife mix that you got going on. So let's roll.
We're chained to one another and we managed to escape from the chain gang. Going north. And we're running and yet we're chained to one another and yet we hate each other's guts. Every time we look at each other, invective fills the air. Going north. Going north. Break the chain that binds us. Going north. We start to run apart. And suddenly we realize that we cannot leave one another because we are joined together by blood. Going north. We are joined together by blood. Going north.
Rub-a-dub radio, rub-a-dub radio. Dread on the go, rub-a-dub radio.
Yeah, play low.
Down the road, out on the balcony, playing domino. Drink a liquor, Heineken, choke a liquor low. Big up to everyone in the studio. Yes, DJ, play that song I know. Biggie Sugar Minor, Yami Bolo, Frankie Paul, Have patience, youth. Have patience. Have patience, youth. Have patience. Have patience, youth. Have patience. Have patience, youth. Have patience.
Goes out to
when I was young,
right
I heard
here.
my grandmother speaking in tongues. She said, make your sons carry pens like guns. She placed her hand on my dome to repeat the cantations. I felt the vibrations of 7 generations like my granddaddy sailor ship on the O. Woe is my grandmother with 7 seeds to grow, 5 daughters born, and the 3rd one beside her. I know that lady well. I spent 9 months inside her. See, I was born from 2 Trini lovers who hid under the covers and discovered each other. My brother, well, he was born when I was 3 and a half, and I laughed because I knew the crew was growing at last. And it came to pass that we would all migrate back to the island state, the land where my ancestors procreate. It was appropriate. My daddy, he wanted for us to know the date, the time, the place, the race where we all came from, the place that he wanted us to build from. And still one day I must return, cause there's a lot more to learn. So have patience, youth, have patience. Have patience, youth, have patience. He told me, have patience, youth, have patience. Have patience, youth, have jobs told me patience.
From my late eyes on this splendiferous dread, I knew he would be my brother, best friend, like caught my eye and I can't lie. My throat got about as dry as Malik Yoba's lips on New York undercover. Are you a vegetarian? You ever heard of Tony Rebel? Cause you staring right at me like these other girls are pork and I'm a fresh vegetable. I'd like to run my fingers through your dreadlocks and sing plantation lullabies to you by candlelight. Don't worry about the man I came with, 'cause on the real, if that's my boyfriend, he won't be tonight. Boy, I could love you miserable. Do things that leave your locks disheveled. Make this bed rock like Bam Bam and Pebbles. And I know my ex-man won't understand, but I'll tell him like this. I'd choose picking mangoes in Jamaica shoeless as his Nyabingi princess before I push a Lexus as your bitch. But rather be lying flat on my back, true that, in his one-room shack. Under God, the stars are my man, creating new life in his honor. Then standing forever upright in Prada shoes a size too tight. Known only to the world as a representation of you, like, oh, her? That's just that dumb nigga's baby mama.
Thanks, everybody, man. That track is so fire, though, Jim. And y'all, the great work y'all put in again. Everybody, this is Northern Griots Network, WordLife20. We're signing out. Big thanks to Liz Clarke, aka HBTSLE, to Jemini, to Zip-Loks, JustJamaal, and to Motion Eddie, on the support, and Dwayne out there doing the things. So stay tuned, everybody, because WordLife20 is coming, is moving, and you're going to hear more. Thanks again, and peace out.
Thank you.
Digri, thank you.
Thank you all.